All right, everyone. I am excited to introduce my next guest, former president and chairman of the CBS broadcast group during the network's powerhouse era of the late 70s and 80s, and author of the brand new book, Behind the Eye, My Life in Media. Please welcome to the show, Gene Jankowski. Hello.
Hello, Jeff. How are you?
Good. Gene, that's quite a resume you have there.
Well, I've lived quite a life.
Yeah, you have. Oh my God. But part of that life, I'm coming to you from Michigan. So I know like some of your learning came from MSU and you spent some time in Detroit.
I've got great times from memories from Lansing, Michigan. And after Lansing, I did go to Detroit and worked for the Fisher Body Craftsmen's Guild for a while, which was educational, travel-wise. I finally had to get started on a career. So after that, I went back to Buffalo and started from there.
The time at MSU, that was communications.
Well, when I was in college, undergrad, I wanted to be in journalism. And then I joined the Navy. I was an officer in the Navy for 4 years. And when I got out, I started wondering, what do I know now? And television had just came around. It's now in the late 50s. I read an article in Time magazine with John Frankenheimer, 27-year-old director of Studio One. I said, wow, that sounds like a nice way to combine my interest in journalism in this new medium. But to do that, I better get an education. So I found Michigan State offered a career in radio, TV, and film. So I went to State, got my master's there, and wound up getting a temporary job with General Motors, where I traveled the country putting on high school assembly programs. Then went back to Buffalo to look for a serious job. And that's where it started.
That's how you got into CBS. It started in radio.
Well, it did. I started at a small radio station in Buffalo. I was married short time. The station was sold. So I said to my wife, we can either stay here or look for a job someplace else. So she said, let's take a chance out of town. So I wrote a lot of letters. A bunch of them went to CBS, different parts of it. One of the letters came back saying, if you're in town, stop by and we'll talk. So I did. I flew to New York, had my interview, was hired a week later. And that's where it all began, in the CBS radio network at sales.
And then from there, what, like a year later, you're president?
Not that easy. No, I was in radio for about 8 years. The last 3 of them as a sales manager. And the television network was looking for an account executive, and my boss recommended me. So I left radio and went to the television network thinking I'd have a long career at the television network. And then somebody said, well, we need a general sales manager for WCBS TV in New York. So I gave up my network job and went to the local television station, which was probably the biggest commercial broadcasting station at that time. And I was there for 3 years. One thing led to another, and eventually I became vice president of finance for the TV stations division. And from there, controller of the corporation, and from controller to head of personnel and facilities. And from there back to the broadcast group.
So now are you president? Is that the path?
I went back as executive vice president, had 4 divisions reporting to me. And then the president resigned, left the company, and I got his job after about 4 months. I was there for 12 years, finally retired. I'm still a retiree, believe it or not.
I believe it. Is this a normal trajectory to the presidency of a major network?
Not at all. No, my career was a series of accidental happenings, if you will. And probably the biggest move and the biggest risk was when I was vice president of sales. I had an offer to either run the St. Louis television station or become the vice president of finance for the division. And that was the key move, because I took the finance position. That opened me up to the corporation. At that time, CBS had 17 divisions, creative playthings, Steinway pianos, publishing, records, and so forth. That was the biggest career move that helped me a lot for the rest of my career.
What was it, besides like having these awesome roles, that people saw in Gene that like then saw in you that like were like, oh, this, that you just kept moving through? Were you like, were you just embracing this new medium of TV?
No, I liked people. I got along well with people, and I could solve problems. And when people had a problem, they knew if they came to me, there was a chance I could help them solve it. So it worked out very well. A lot of risks on my part every time I made the move, but in the end, it all paid off.
Oh man, that's amazing. So, all right. So when you took over as president of CBS, So you guys are in third place. So,
Yes.
all right. So you're like in a tough spot, right? Because now all eyes are on you, but you were there for a long time. So, like, what was the battle plan? Like, you get there, you're in third place. And then it's like today you could have been in 100th place, but back then there's only 3
Well,
networks.
we were in third place and everybody wanted us to be number one. I had a bright guy out at entertainment, Bob Daly, who eventually went to run Warner Brothers Studios. And we picked some pretty good programs to replace the stuff that was on the air that wasn't working very well. And in 1978, we put MASH on the air. And Dallas went on the air in 1978. And Dallas became a big hit and had 2 spinoffs.
I've heard of both of these. These are, you're just kind of casually mentioning that you brought on 2 of the biggest shows of all time.
Yeah.
So what was not working? Do you remember what wasn't working that you had to kind of boot off?
God, I forgot. The ones that don't work, you forget. You forget the losers.
Both Dallas and MASH had some of the biggest moments in TV history. So if we talk about
here's the key. In Dallas, as I said, was on the air from 1978, and by 1982, it was still a hit. If you're not familiar with the show, Dallas was run by a guy named J.R. Ewing, Larry Hagman role. J.R. Ewing was sort of a curmudgeon. And in those 4 years, at least 6 people wanted to see him dead. So in the spring of 1982, somebody shot J.R. And that was the last episode for the season. So nobody knew whether he lived or whether he died or who did it. And you had to wait till the next fall season began to find out what happened to JR. Well, how do you keep a thing like that a secret? What they did is they took the 6 people that didn't like JR and they shot an individual scene with each one of them, and each one of them shot JR. So over the course of the summer, none of the 6 knew whether or not they were the culprit. They had to wait until the fall to find out whether their clip was the one that was going to be used in the program that went on the air. It went on the air. It was syndicated worldwide. But here's the thing. When it went on the air in November, over 300 million people tuned in around the world to see who shot JR. And of the 300, close to 100 million were watching CBS. Biggest audience to a primetime television program at that time. And then that was only surpassed by MASH. The following year, the producers, MASH, came to us and they said, we've been on the air for 10 years. We want to go off on top. So this is going to be our last year. So that whole season, we're prepared for the final episode. And when the final episode of MASH, Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, aired, it was watched by over 100 million people, surpassing the Dallas audience. So it set another record. And that was February of 1983. And here it is, November 2025, and it still holds the record as the largest audience to a primetime entertainment program.
I feel like it's never going to get beaten. Now there's just too much to watch, too many options. I remember, well, let's talk about Dallas first, because I know I was too young, but my parents were really into it. But I remember it as a pop culture kind of just phenomenon, just who shot JR and just that whole thing. It's just one of those things. And it's been kind of, I think The Simpsons might have done a thing, like a version of that one time with who shot one of their characters. It was part of just pop culture from that point forward. I didn't know what you just told me, though, about them filming the different scenes. It's interesting because like today, in today's world, something leaks. It's so easy for something to leak to millions of people.
Well, it was back then, too. But the producers were smart enough to know that the only way they could prevent it by taking the course of action that they took, and it worked.
A leak back then, though, that would be like something getting into like the National Enquirer. Then it would probably take a while for everyone to find out, wouldn't it? Like versus like if I leak something today, 100 million people could see it within an hour.
True.
All right, so that's awesome. And then I had Loretta Swit on my show, and we talked about the finale. May she rest in peace. MASH was just an amazing, amazing show.
Hot Lips,
yeah. Being in charge of CBS during these particular moments, it must feel really good. I mean, it's like to be like at the top like that.
Well, it is, but you work hard. It doesn't come easy. Care about it. You're concerned about it all the time. and you work at it, and you get a lot of good people to work on it with you.
How much of like when there's programming going on like that, are you aware of what's happening with these large shows while it's happening? Or do you find out just like everyone else? Or like, how involved were you with, Patrick Ewing's having a fight with, with, like internal stripes on a show or a plot line that you might not be happy with, maybe,
No, I didn't get that down. We had producers that were in charge of that kind of responsibility. No, I didn't. But I certainly was responsible for the results when it aired and whether it did well or not. That I did care about, and I did get involved. And if it didn't work out, first question I would ask is, how come?
Was there anything that you thought was going to be along those lines that did not pan out the way you thought it was going to?
One that didn't happen on my watch. It happened before I got the job. The government inserted a primetime access rule because they thought the networks had too much power. Sound familiar? And this is 1970. The networks could no longer program 7:30 to 8 o'clock Monday through Saturday. The local stations had to find alternate sources of programming. And on Sundays, the networks could still program 7 to 11. However, 7 to 8 had to be wholesome, all-family programming. And that was really a tribute to ABC. ABC was running the wonderful world of Disney, and Congress didn't want to be accused of taking Walt Disney away from the children. So CBS put an all-family program called Apple's Way, produced by the same people that produced the Waltons. They were hoping to have a contemporary version of the same success. But the Apple family had a little girl and a little boy, 2 little apples, wholesome, all family. It was a disaster. It failed. And so while the entertainment division is scrambling to find another replacement, the head of research said, hey, we've got this program at 6 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon called 60 Minutes. Why don't we just move it up to 7 o'clock? Qualifies as news and public affairs. And so CBS moved 60 Minutes, and the rest, they say, is history. From that day forward, 60 Minutes is, if it wasn't the number one show for the week, it's certainly been in the top 10. And here it is, 57 years later, 60 Minutes is still up there performing as well as it did way back when.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, what's nice about it is then you don't have to worry about the entertainment division finding a replacement for something that's that steady.
Were there other things that the government got involved with back in the 70s? I always think it's interesting because we think things don't change, but
they got involved with content. There was always a tension between politics and news because the news presents facts, and often the politicians don't like the facts to get out there. CBS did a program, The Selling of the Pentagon. Congress got so incensed, the president of CBS had to go and testify before Congress. Turned out CBS was absolutely right. During my watch, we put on a segment of 60 Minutes called The Uncounted Enemy. General Westmoreland was in charge of the troops in Vietnam, and the numbers that he was providing weren't accurate. And CBS did a story on 60 Minutes with Mike Wallace as the co-anchor, and Congress called us to court. We were sued by Westmoreland and some of the other people around him, and we went to court, and we had all the facts correct, and he eventually withdrew his suit. So the biggest thing the news has going for it is integrity and credibility, and they can't afford to lose that.
I read about the Westmoreland suit, $120 million libel suit.
Yes. Yep.
Oh, man. It's got to be nerve-wracking, though, when something like that's under your
Well, it goes on for a while because you're testifying in court. They keep calling different witnesses. We prevailed because the facts were every bit as true as we said they were.
Did you get to hang out with presidents?
I've met them. I've met Ronald Reagan. I've met Jimmy Carter. I've met Jerry Ford and George Bush, Bill Clinton. I met Bill Clinton. I had to give a speech in Little Rock, Arkansas, and he was still the governor. So I gave the speech, and he came up afterwards, and he said, if you ever want a job in politics in Georgia, let me know.
Oh, man. And I read that you met the Pope.
I met 2 popes.
2?
Had a private audience with John Paul. And then I had a meeting a couple of years ago with Pope Francis. It's awesome. Awesome experience to meet the head of the Catholic Church representing millions of people. It's an awesome experience.
Do you have pictures with you and both these popes and all the presidents that you've met?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I got pictures of shaking hands with them. I got pictures shaking hands with Ronald Reagan. I actually played golf with Jerry Ford after he was president. I hosted George Bush on a couple of occasions. He attended the Daytona 500, and I got pictures of him, he and I eating hot dogs at the beginning of the race. He was the official grand marshal. We had a tennis tournament, and George showed up for that. Quite a tennis player, quite an athlete. So I've got a lot of memories, and a lot of it's captured.
Amazing. And CJ, the orangutan, of course.
I did not succumb to his advances.
That was a funny picture. Let's see. Television in the 70s and the 80s. Like, I'm fascinated with that. Do you feel that you guys were influencing culture or reflecting it? Like, what was the balance there? Like,
reflecting it. We said it's not our job to influence it. And when it comes to news, just report the facts. You don't promulgate anything. And it comes to entertainment, you don't push the envelope.
And then when you took over CBS, it was referred to as the Tiffany network.
And we kept that. We worked hard to maintain that image.
So that means high quality, prestigious programming. That was where that came from. So then you would make decisions if a show came across or some kind of thing that didn't fit that standard, then you would send it away.
Well, we did that with one comedy. We had The Incredible Hulk on the air and Wonder Woman with Linda Carter. And we had another cartoon type primetime show. And we said, we put that on, we're going to be looked upon as the Cartoon Network. We're not going to do that. And we didn't. And we put on Paper Chase as a replacement of the cartoon broadcast.
I have a picture of the Hulk right there. You see some of my, Lou Ferrigno,
Lou Ferrigno.
But those Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk, Bill Bixby, Lou Ferrigno, Linda Carter, those are like mainstays. So did you at some point did you decide like these just don't fit our
well, CBS? As I said, we did that with the one broadcast that was been another one along the lines of Incredible Hulk, and we said we can't do that. We got enough of programming to satisfy the people that are interested in that. We don't want to drive away some of our other loyal viewers.
Those are some of the shows that have like lasted in the psyche and in the pop culture to the
days. Take a look at the Dukes of Hazzard. We put Dukes of Hazzard on the air, and it was a smash hit. Mr. Paley said, "Do we have to keep that on the air?" And we said yes, because we have a very great loyal audience to the Dukes of Hazzard. They love the Dukes.
I love J.D. Hogg. I did not love when you switched to the Cousins. And to this day, I could sing you the theme song right now if you wanted to hear it.
You see that? So you're familiar with it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The Dukes of Hazzard was a classic show. That was just one of those. Daisy Dukes. I mean, like,
yeah.
I mean, it's like, yeah, it's huge to this day. They still have conventions and get-togethers. And so that was one that was questionable, though, in the internal ranks. But you kept because of the demographic that it served.
Well, it was big with our Southern affiliates, too. They loved it. So it did very, very well in some of the Southern markets.
So what other shows were you on the fence about during that time?
Oh, God, I can't. You're pulling me back to...
I know, but this is what... Let's see. Let's talk Norman Lear.
What's that?
Let's talk about Norman Lear. You had a lot of Norman Lear shows. Norman Lear was All in the Family, The Jeffersons, probably like, I mean, these again, like so many classic shows that are still in today's...
He was a great producer.
Yeah, his last show that he did, Boots, which is on Netflix now. I mean, he was prolific until he died.
At over 100 years of age.
Yeah, unbelievable. Those were very specific, deep, and culturally introspective shows. I mean, All in the Family. People always say, "Could All in the Family even exist now?"
All in the Family caused a lot of internal discussion at CBS, but then so did Maude. Maude got into a couple of hot topic situations in her show that caused a lot of people a lot of soul searching, whether we're going too far or not. But they were hits, and they worked.
Maude, right? Maude, you're probably referring to abortion. They were talking about abortion on Maude, and then obviously like on All in the Family, just racial. Archie being the lovable bigot, I guess.
Yes, a lovable bigot. He touched on things. It turned out the right way for the people. That the message that came off watching the show was always better for the public. Not necessarily good for Archie, but better for the public.
And that's a show that's still, I mean, I'm sure you watched when they did the live All in the Family, when they did it live, Jimmy Kimmel and Norman Lear, they did the live kind of broadcast of the show with different actors. I mean, it's still relevant. I mean, it's like
the big one was when Sammy Davis Jr. gave Archie a big kiss right toward the end of the broadcast.
Sammy Davis. Yes, amazing. Are there any iconic shows that didn't make it to air? Like, were there any that you passed on that went somewhere else to maybe another network?
I didn't, but I was found out later that CBS had a chance to get Law and Order. Dick Wolf, the producer of Law and Order, had told me some years later, he said CBS had a chance for that. But one of our program executives in California passed on the opportunity to take Law and Order. That's probably one of the biggest mistakes one of our guys ever made.
Yeah, because Law and Orders, there's like 40 Law and Orders now.
Oh my goodness. It's that Wolf's got to be the most successful producer in the history of primetime television.
Yeah. Passing on Law and Order is probably whoever did that does not bring that up at dinner parties.
Yeah. That the man who did that's no longer alive. So he's
or I'm sure he didn't bring it up. He doesn't want us talking about it right now, even from there. All right. So we talked about 60 Minutes, but you worked with the news department at your time was Walter Cronkite, and then that became Dan Rather, and that's quite a time.
The toughest job I had was replacing Walter, the most toughest man and the most honest and most trusted man in America. How do you replace a guy like that?
How did you go about setting on that task?
We had a reporter, correspondent, Roger Mudd, and the previous president of CBS News had pretty much implied to Roger that he'd be the replacement for Walter because he sat in for him for a couple of times when Walter was on vacation. I got my job a couple of years before Walter really wanted to retire. And I thought long and hard about it. And I said, Roger Mudd is not the guy. And we had this fellow, Dan Rather, in the Washington office, and he had everything going for him. He was a battle-weary correspondent, tough, fearless, experienced, knew Washington politics, and happened to be good-looking. So he brought some youth to the replacement for Walter, and ABC wanted him. They made a big pass at him. So I spent a lot of time wooing Rather to get him to stay. I said, the people like you, you've got experience here. And fortunately, he decided to stay. And he was there for over 24 years. That record will never be broken. He was terrific. The industry could use more Dan Rathers today.
He's still very active, or at least on Twitter. And
he is. He's 93.
That is amazing. So I imagine the years of Walter Cronkite, though, were also incredible. I mean, he's such an icon in the news world.
Yeah, he is. It still is.
It still is, yeah. How did you deal with either Dan or Walter? I imagine as people get super famous on any of these CBS shows.
Well, hey, first of all, they happen to be nice guys. They're not prima donnas. And even though they're famous, they never let it go to their heads. Walter was a common guy. We'd go sailing together. He and his wife were terrific. Betsy kept Walter in his place. And same with Dan Rather. Sadly, he lost his wife past October. But he also was not a prima donna. So I still stay in touch with Dan.
Amazing. Who was a prima donna, Gene? In the CBS family of megastars, who was the one prima donna that you most had to deal with and bring back to earth?
Probably Larry Hagman.
Too big for his britches with JR.
Oh, Who Shot Him? That episode made him a household name, and he lived it to the hilt. He'd go to parties afterwards, public appearances, wearing a 10-gallon hat, and when he'd take his hat off, money would come floating out of his hat. And he didn't like to smoke, and he didn't like people who smoke, so he carried a little bubble bottle, a little child's bubble bottle. And when he'd be sitting down at a dinner table, if somebody was smoking a cigarette, he'd pull out the bubble bottle and start blowing bubbles in their face. So the guy said, "Well, you're blowing bubbles in my face." And he said, "Well, you're blowing smoke into my lungs."
I can respect that. I mean, man. All right, so that's prima donna. So the other question, in these days, especially with social media and everything, scandals or PR crises can happen pretty fast. Was there any one in particular or 10 that you remember like having to kind of deal with that kind of happened on your watch? Any big PR crisis?
Not that I can comes to mind off the top of my head, no.
Oh,
No,
right.
any problems I usually had wasn't with the on-air talent, it was with executives.
Did you
It
have a
was
problem with the executives from NBC and ABC? Was there like what was the rivalry like? Just trying to, because you're trying to scratch your way to number one. They're trying to hold their spots at one and two.
You just do your job. As people say, don't worry about it. Just focus on your job and let the results speak for themselves.
What was your biggest censorship issue back then that today would be nothing? I remember like Jeannie's,
Well,
belly button.
God, I think the hottest potato that we had to deal with for a while was the Maud episode that you mentioned earlier. Other than that, the biggest problem I had was persuading the law department that an interview that we had with Kennedy should air. Roger Mudd, as I said, was a good journalist. He interviewed Ted Kennedy, and he asked Ted Kennedy why he wanted to be president. And Kennedy stumbled. He couldn't come up with a fast answer. And some people think that cost him the presidency. But in any event, the law department said, we can't run that. We'll face an equal time situation. And I said, it's too big a journalistic story. We cannot not afford to run it. We'll take our chances. And we ran the story, and it got a lot of attention, and we didn't have any repercussions from it. The one we did have repercussions, we mentioned earlier with Westmoreland and the uncounted enemy in Vietnam.
Late night wars. Carson, what was the late night plan at CBS?
We struggled. We didn't have one when I was there. A lot of our stations were running movies, and we tried. Who's the young guy that was running Jeopardy for so long?
Alex Trebek?
No,
Merv
not
Griffin?
Jeopardy. I'm sorry, Wheel of Fortune.
Oh, Pat Sajak?
Pat Sajak. So we put Pat Sajak on the air at 11:30, and it didn't work. It didn't. He wasn't strong enough to carry that kind of a broadcast. But other than that, all the things that happened after I really retired. ABC went to a half-hour news. You recall at 11:30 they had a news broadcast. A lot of different things went on that back then. And then the biggest thing that happened right after I retired is that CBS managed to snail David Letterman from NBC. It took over the 11:30, and from that point forward, CBS started to show some signs of success at the 11:30 time slot.
David Letterman is amazing. So good win on that one. Well, let me ask you a question because, you're familiar with all the Jimmy Kimmel stuff that happened with some of the things he said, and he got taken off the air, and then he came back. I wanted to ask you, though, about Lou Grant and Ed Asner and Lou Grant being canceled, the story behind that, because I'd always read it wasn't
what Lou Grant proposed. Lou Grant had been on the air for 5 years, and we were losing audience. He wasn't as successful as he had been. And like all other primetime programs, comes to a point, their life expectancy dissipates, and it's time to make a change. It wasn't nothing more complicated than that. And Ed Asner is the one who decided he was going to make something more out of it than it actually was.
So it was more Ed's positioning that it was more kind of from his activism or anything like that.
Yeah. It had nothing to do with it. He was a good actor. He was terrific in the Mary Tyler Moore series. And he was good for a number of years on his own show. But then the audience started to look for other things to watch, and it was time for us to make a change.
Okay. Awesome.
I think that's, if my memory serves me correctly, that might even be when Cagney and Lacey went on the air to replace Asner.
Cagney and Lacey is an interesting one too, right? Because you guys were going to cancel Cagney and Lacey. And this is always one of those funny things where shows, when you hear the history about a hugely popular show. I mean, on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Terry, his character's kids are named Cagney and Lacey. You know what I mean? And but you're talking decades later, and Sharon Glass, I got to talk to her a little bit, but she was telling me about how there was a letter writing campaign to save that show.
Cagney and Lacey?
Yeah.
Well, it was a good program.
But good programs sometimes get canceled, right? You decide.
Rarely. Good programs that almost got canceled that went on for success was the Waltons. The Waltons, it premiered and there was no audience. And we knew it was a good program. And so we had a very crackerjack advertising promotion executive who took out full pages in the New York Times that did nothing but repeat what the critics had said about the show and how terrific it was. And through his advocate campaign, the audience discovered it. And the Waltons went on for success for a number of years after that.
It's amazing that you were able to kind of believe in the show and then help it find its audience.
Yeah.
Do shows like WKRP in Cincinnati or Square Pegs, things that have gone on, like are still considered like cult classics, or, you know, like,
Yeah.
do you ever look back and go, I should have let those run a little longer?
We premiered WKRP Cincinnati in front of the Columbia Records Group. There was an overwhelming cheer and hooray when they saw it, because a lot of that program was sort of reflected some of what the records people do when they're promoting their records to the radio stations. But that was a cult hit. It did very well for a while.
Square Pegs is another one of those infamous ones. I think there was one season that people still talk about to this day. Sarah Jessica Parker was in that. Towards the end of your, no, actually, it would be like in the middle, like MTV happens. Did that change things?
Not really. No, MTV got a different audience, young people. A lot of that audience really weren't watching shows on CBS. CBS always had the reputation as skewing demographically older than ABC or NBC, so it didn't bother. MTV didn't really bother us that much.
Okay, so you didn't see like, oh, there's this emerging or like booming youth market that's really kind of doing that. So it didn't change your.
No.
What do you see as the biggest difference between programming and how things were done on your watch and how things are done today? I mean, because today, let me ask you a different way. What would be your approach in today's world of streaming? And it's so different now. It's not like just CBS. Now you could have CBS this and CBS streaming.
You're still going to look for the best programs. Television programming is a collaboration in creativity. So you not only have to have the good script, you have to have the good characters, the good director, put all the pieces together, and then hopefully you have a hit. Frankly, I think there's too much. And if it wasn't for the fact that there were subscriptions, I suspect a lot of these shows would never be seen by anybody. But it's the fact that the people pay money and then don't necessarily watch the shows, but they bought the subscription. And so all this stuff gets made. It doesn't increase the audience to any of them. What it does, it subdivides the audience that's there. Two things govern your success in television. One is the 24-hour day. People still have to eat, sleep, and go to work. And the second is the population. There's only 100 million families, a little more than 100 million TV families in the country. And putting out more product and distributing more stuff doesn't increase the size of that audience. It subdivides the audience that's there. But running a network, I still do what the networks do and what Dick Wolf continues to do. Dick's still got 10 network shows on the air, I guess, between the three networks. He's doing it the old-fashioned way.
Gene, do you have a top three? I should say, what are your top favorite shows that you're watching now? Like, what's the favorite thing? What do you watch on TV?
60 Minutes, without question.
Is anything new? You've been watching that for decades.
No, still do. I watch the occasional Law and Order. I'm still interested in what happens to Mariska Hargitay. And
who isn't?
CBS. 60 Minutes is probably my top dog on CBS. That's probably it.
You don't have any favorite comedies or anything like that?
No. Oh, I will tell you this. I do. I watch syndicated. I watch Jeopardy because I always feel at my age, anything I can do to stimulate my brain will help me stay alive. Yeah. And I'll be honest. I'll admit, I watch cable news, CNN and Fox, flipping back and forth depending upon the time of the day or what show happens to be on.
Okay, sounds good. In your book, you wrote that you left CBS in 1988 because it was no longer a company you wanted to work for.
Yes.
Why is that?
Because there was no respect for protocol. Larry Tisch had come in, start selling off the company. He sold off records, sold off publishing, sold off musical instruments. And then he started firing people without going through the management ranks. For no reason, he said, get rid of the president of CBS News. Well, why? Because I want somebody else to take the job, and he brought somebody in from outside. I don't work that way. Paley never did that. Paley never gave anybody an order. He would ask a lot of questions, but you were left to your own decisions. Figured your decisions, your responsibility and your authority have to go hand in hand. And when I was with CBS toward the end, I had the responsibility, but I lost the authority. And so how can I be held responsible if I'm not making the decisions? So I said, this is not the way it's supposed to work. And I had enough years in and I was old enough. So I said, I'm going to take early retirement, move on to other things.
And Gene, what are you doing these days in
I
your
just finished the
retirement?
book.
I know you wrote the book, but I mean, besides writing your book,
I'm spending a lot of time trying to promote that.
Well, okay, before you wrote the book, what were you doing?
I was caring about my family. I've got 9 grandchildren. I just had my first great-grandchild this past July.
Wow.
I've always been close to my family, so I see them as much as I could. My one daughter persuaded me to climb Mount Kilimanjaro after she graduated from college, so I did that. We traveled to around the world, took the family to Australia for one Christmas vacation. My wife and a couple of the daughters went through Thailand. So it's a lot of stuff,
You are keeping busy and focusing on the important things in life, family.
Those people now is most important thing are family and friends.
Gene, hold up the book one more time. All right, so we got Behind the Eye, My Life in Media with Gene Jankowski. All right. President of CBS. If you want, look up CBS shows. I could list off. We named a bunch of them, obviously, but from 1977 to 1989, just CBS, like it's just, it's everything. Thank you for a lot.
This has been a pleasure, Jeff. Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it too, Gene. Thank you so much.
You be safe.
You too, my friend.
Yeah. Bye-bye.